The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everybody, welcome to the weekly Noyantis Usergroup meeting. Today is Monday the 22nd of July 2019. Myself and I think John, actually I haven't spoke to him, but I think John is here.
I'm here.
You're there. Sorry John, we normally have a quick hello beforehand, don't we? So
Yeah.
Well it was all quiet, so I thought, and I was a few minutes late, so I thought, well let's just get going.
Let's just do it. Good job.
Okay,
Right.
now we're going to jump straight into stuff today because I didn't want to cancel, but by the same token, I do need to cut it short. So apologies straight from the off for that. With us just releasing 2 updates in this last week, I thought it was very important that we do the webinar and to just cover a couple of the things which were in a very recent release, which I know 2 of the users here and or possibly more actually will be hopefully using and finding useful. So the first one we're going to cover is the report control. Oh, I forgot to say, obviously anyone's got any questions or queries, feel free to raise your hand and we'll get the content covered accordingly, obviously, so on and so forth. So, and our hand rolls here, and I did promise we would look at something on the report control today regarding what you call a virtual mode, but we're going to struggle. I do apologise, as I say. In truth, I could ill afford this time for the webinar, but the last thing I wanted to do was cancel as well. So, yes, I do apologise for that. Okay, report control. Let me just open up one of the things on the other screen here, and we'll cover some of the things that were in the recent release. And this was released last week, late last week as well. I think it was Thursday, possibly Friday. Okay. Okay, right. So I don't know if anyone's downloaded. There was a new version 408, if I remember correctly. Oh, Bill saying he's found one small problem, so I'm gonna get that microphone opened. But it was 408. Okay, so Bill, shall I?
Hey, good morning.
Morning, yes. I'm going to say your microphone's open. Shall I show the content, or do you want to describe what the problem is?
Well, it was just a real simple thing. It was in the one with the form.
Yes.
If you typed in if let's say you had a person in there and then you went and typed in his address after the fact, and
Okay.
when you save the form, it doesn't refresh that address until you click off from it and go back to it. That was the only thing
I know what you mean.
I didn't have much time to play with it, but that was the only thing I noticed just right offhand.
I know what you mean. Well, let's have a quick look. That's going to be just a missing display command. So
yes, I'm sure that's all it is.
But let's have a look. Okay, well, I mean, so far so good. If that's the only thing, we'll take.
I hadn't had a chance to actually put it in use yet, but I did notice that one thing.
Okay. Nope, that's
Thank
good.
you.
I'll leave
It looked good.
No, very good, and especially for legacy users, it will. Obviously, yourself and I know John uses them as well. It should come in handy. There's a particular system I inherited, which is all in legacy, and I'll be moving most of the lists across to this. I've put it off purposely until we have this, so it's going to come in handy for myself as well. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I see a lot of places where I'm going to be using it. So.
No, very good. Okay, so let's cover. Straight from the start. So the main one we've just mentioned is we've revamped the example app, included a couple of new examples in there in the demo app. So if you have a look, we go across and you've got a new tab, which is the view/file loaded. Now, that's it basically running. You have your window, you place the report control as you would do previously, but this time, instead of it being queue loaded or manually loaded or data bind and so on, now you can actually say that you want to take the records or the detail, the content from your files. Now, what it does behind the scenes is builds a view, lets you create the prop filter in the prop order for them views automatically, and you can join tables as you would expect to be able to do with a view. So let's just take one quick look at that. We'll explain what the difference is between these two in a second. So we go to our examples, just looking for where the view is. Standard view, load content. There we go. So as I said, we would have had a window. We've placed a report control, which is a list for those unaware. We placed it on the window. And what we've also done is moved the data source tab to be the first tab, because it is becoming more and more prevalent. It's a true data source of that of the report control, the contents. So there's the new option, view/files. It will ask you for what is your primary table. In this for this particular demo app, it was just customers. I tested it obviously with joins, as you can imagine, and so on and so forth. We want to know what the unique. That's cutting that off. That should say unique field. Sorry, unique field. Should really move them prompts. Might do that in a second, actually. Okay, so what the unique field is, and of course, with the report control, you always want to come back to one unique item, if you will, identifier per row. So we want to know what the unique field is. We've got a unique code on there, so that's perfect. You can specify the order. I've put it in there because people who work with files and views would expect to have that option. But in reality, there's really nothing to be gained by putting that in, because what you'd want to do is really get the data in there as fast as possible and then let the report control do that ordering at runtime using the sorting option. And of course, if you're using save and restore for your layouts and your grouping and your sorting, then it's going to be redone at runtime for the user requirements anyway, on their save and restore settings. So you can use the order. It's in there for completeness. I just don't think you'll actually need it. But of course, if it wasn't there, somebody would raise it. The filter, yes, of course, you would want that. And you could, if you want to, do join tables. So we haven't got this, but we could do something like we would want to join, hypothetically, an inbox table. Really bad example, that. The in ID equals the cus code, something like so, and it's an inner join. And that would, I'm going to get rid of that in a second, but let's just show you the ramifications of that. Let's take a quick look at the source. And we should be able to see for our view that we forgot to actually specify any columns for the from the inbox. But yes, basically it's done exactly what we've just asked it to do and create the join. Back to our report control. Not sure of the quality of the data, so I'm going to take that back out. And from this example, that's really all you need for this example. So I think if we look at these, they're not present. We just want to get some data into a report control and present them to the end user. Okay, then of course we've got all the power of moving things around, getting rid, grouping if it's turned on, so on and so forth. So that is it's a very quick summary of it, but it's also a very powerful enhancement. I think a really good example, a really good enhancement for the report control. So tying in with that is this example, and we can see here we've got it's basically that same loading via view, but as we're going up and down, you can see basically the view is said to only bring back certain fields like address line 1 and the telephone number, but we also wanted all the other fields as well. So it was already in there, but for completeness I'll show it. On that same tab, the data source, we've got related record. So we've got our record coming in from the customer table. Unique code is the ID. Could be, you might have a concatenation, if you will, of fields, but you do still need to come back to some kind of uniqueness. That's the point. So we could go, okay, we want the related record. So we need to know it's coming from the customers. I know it could be quite blatant, but remember this could be queue loaded, could be just a memory list table and so on. So your related record would really come into its own there. So this related record works independently from whether it's file and view loaded and so on. So we can say the related record comes from the customer table using that key, and it wants to know what the key elements are. So that's only got one element, and it's the customer code. And it takes one of the predefined options, which is passed to the particular point where it finds the related record, and it's the row ID. Okay, we've got the unique field as we mentioned earlier on this one, and it's the cus code, and we do have a display after the row selected ticked. So what we could see there, as we select that one and there and that one and there, and what it's actually doing there is it's finding you, depending on the row, it's finding you the related record, and basically doing an access try fetch and then doing a display if we've told it to do a display. So then you can actually keep your active record in sync should you want to, and then the whole record buffer is available to you, but only when the user's gone and selected it. So it makes it a bit more efficient. Following on from that, again, mainly for completeness, is you've got the insert, change, delete buttons. Same as the Clarion browse. You've got the insert, change, delete. You've got the view, the select, the print, so on and so forth. Basically, what we're doing is we're replacing the Clarion browse. So let's just take a look from a screen design. Actually, let's look at it from that point of view. We've added report control. We then chose, although probably won't be available, it was the update buttons here, which are these. Oh, that's adding extra ones. Let me come out of that. Yeah, bad example. But we added it via the control extensions, as you would expect. We go to our report control, the buttons themselves, and we associate them with a report control, because you might have multiples on there. And you've got some options to say, add them to the right click, the usual things, disable when there's no records, or hide when there's no records if you wanted to, that kind of thing. And you've got a refresh window. So Bill, what you were just saying about it not refreshing, that might be linked to that setting there, and I will check. But the form that it calls, if anyone remembers from one of the, let's say, last week's webinar, I think we mentioned it there, the form it calls is now part of the report control itself. Again, it's still on this tab, but it's on the update procedure. And the reason it's on there and not part of the insert, change, delete buttons is you might not want to use those buttons, but you still want to give the user the ability to change the records. So for example, you've got some data in there. You don't want the insert, change, delete. You just want it, if they double click on a record, to go into the equivalent of change. So we don't want the buttons on the screen, but we do want the ability to change that. So what that will do here is, that's why it's on the report control template itself. And we just call the update procedure. The other tabs you've got left there is the procedure to call for the print, the procedure to call for the view. Unlike the Clarion buttons, where the view calls the same form as the update form, the update procedure, just in view mode, this will do. If you've not specified a view procedure, it will use the update one in view mode, just like Clarion, but it just gives you the ability to have a different form if you're viewing a record. Because what we normally do is we call the update form and then go through, check the global request, and go off and disable or hide a load of information. So I just give you the ability to have a separate form, should you want. A separate window, I should say, should you want. Ooh, we're going at a speed, aren't we? Okay, so that is that particular change, the change button. So we can say, okay, let's go to this. We'll use our change button. 86 anti-systems. We'll just update that to 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, and it's not going to refound it, which it should have done. So I think that's what you said, Bill. So yeah, that's no problem. I will correct that. Yeah, it's anti 1, 2, 3, 4. Just actually, although it's only test data in here, so you can see from a reset point of view, it tries to do it as efficient as it can, as you can imagine. Brings back just the bare information it needs, and so on and so forth, but still keeps the thing in sync, the data in sync. Okie dokie. So other changes. That's obviously a big change, and I know, like I say, there's a couple of people here who's waiting for that. So hopefully it will go down well. A couple of webinars ago, again with the report control, we actually added some new methods regarding changing the font and so on. I did promise I would put you a setting on here, basically to call them by default, because our other templates do have them. So under appearance, we was going to have font. It didn't make it into that, but it will do. There's another change coming for the report control. It will see the light of day way in advance of the DevCon, because I want to show it off at the DevCon, and it's all to do with the data grouping and the automatic totaling that's available to you via the report control. And I use it, and I can't believe we've not really put this into the template and shown it off more, but basically gives you and your end user a lot of power. If you think they do a lot of data analysis, they get the rows, various different totals. Let's say they are invoice totals, and maybe you group them via region, or you group them via salesperson, I should say, or you group them via customer, and so on. So you've got this list of invoices or list of transactions over a date range, and you group them, and you give the user the ability to group them to however they want, maybe region and then customer within the region, or region and salesperson within the region, that kind of thing. The power is all down to the user. Well, we can put totaling in to the numeric columns, and it will automatically calculate those totals for you as they're grouping, and we don't have to write one line of code for it. So that is coming in your next update. So I will do the font, the default font, if you will, settings at the same time. But you have got the methods available to you. If for those who remember from a couple of weeks ago, you've got the set header font, set row font. You already had a set footer font, interestingly enough, and it takes the parameters of the name, the size, italic, the usual things you would expect. Oh, okie dokie. Obviously, there's one thing I forgot, and it's really related to these examples we've just covered. So we've got this here. We brought that from the table, the customer table, and this column, and that column, and so on. But this random isn't part of the table. It's something I wanted. It's the equivalent of but it's like a local field within a list box, if you will. And I wanted that in there. So how we've covered that, because you've got new methods for that, we've got our report control. We've said it's loading from a view, what columns you've got, as you can see there. So we've selected a one out the table, so it starts it with an exclamation. And then we've actually put our own column definition in. So we said we just want an extra column called random, funnily enough. We've got a title, random number, and so on. Okay, so we've got an extra column in our definition. If we look at the queue that's been created, sorry, no, it's not a queue. That's a wrong terminology. That's Clarion terminology. We look at the group structure that's been created. So it creates a group structure so it can load the data basically very, very efficiently. It's created the group. it's given a record ID, which is its own internal holder. It's got the columns that we've defined, and it's got this random one. So of course this can't be a like because it's a local column. We don't know anything about it. So it just takes on a large C string, 1001 characters, which I think hopefully will be sufficient. If not, we can tweak that going forward. In the Clarion list, you would have had the equivalent of set queue record. So in the report control, of course, you're going to need that same one. So now we've got set row content, which is the exact same replacement, sorry, the exact same type embed point as set queue record. And here we can see I've just put basically the report control row group dot random, which is the column we want to go and set, equals just a random number. But of course, in there you would put any maybe manually calculated fields and so on. Sorry, I've just seen a question come up. Just trying to expand the question box. I think it's from Bill. Bill, your mic should still be open if you want to.
I didn't want to interrupt. I just asked if the report control would inherit the font settings from
any font.
Any font.
Not at present, but we're getting more and more requests for it, I have to admit. Yeah, basically, I mean, just like we never used to support send to, and then we added this, the support for it, so it works with send to. We are going to add the support for any font. And the good news for yourself and anybody who needs that requirement is, the golden rule. If I need it, it goes higher up the queue, and I need it for one of our products. So for not one of our products, one of our projects. Yeah, it's one of our projects. So we'll tie in. I'll be honest. What we'll tie directly into their class. So we won't go reading from I and I. What we'll do is we'll have a look at how they've implemented it via their class and so on, and we'll hook straight into their template in their class, and we'll just grab the settings that way. So
that'd be nice.
That's exactly what we do with the resize. In fact, all the resizers work that way. We basically we have a look which resizing you're using. So you've got Capesoft's resize and split, and you've got Mike Hanson's super resize, and you've got Clarion, of course. Looks at which one you've got used. You don't have to tick anything. Calculates which one, calculates its class name, and then because it knows which one, it calculates which embed points to place the code and call efficiently. So not efficiently, sorry, respectively. So we'll do exactly the same approach because it just works. So we'll just do the same. We'll probably put it on a third-party template tab. Now, at the moment, we have them in the other products, but the only real third parties we mainly plug into, apart from, like I say, we resize and send to, is our own, where we say, let the command bars talk to the docking pane, and let the docking pane talk to a task panel, that type of thing. Well, it'll go on there. There'll be an extra tab on there for any font. Are you using any font, and any settings we may need from that? I don't think we'll need too many settings, I'll be honest. We should be able to calculate. So, but we need it for a particular project I'm working on for a client over in the States, actually. So yeah, you can expect to see that probably before DevCon, before September. So we back to this. We have the new embed point of the set row content. Another one you would probably be familiar with, just to cover, if you was doing a Clarion list and you needed to filter under condition. So you've got your nice prop filter, so that's nice and efficient and so on. But you need to filter under condition at runtime. So it might be a particular user can see this and another user can't see it, that type of thing. So just like you would have, I know you have validate record in the Clarion list, you've got the same here. So all of them will start with data because they are handling the data, but we've got a data validate record. And it basically works on the same principle. In the default is record OK. We're not sure if you would have the includes of that included, so we've created a second set of equates as well. So you've got the Clarion equator of record OK and record filtered. Then you've got the Noyantis one of NYF record OK and NYF record filtered, just in case you don't have the Clarion equates. Realistically, you will, but just in case you haven't, you've got ours, and they match 1 for 1, so you can use ours or Clarions. But just as you would in the other, in the Clarion one, the default is record OK, so you would put your condition in here and just basically set the return value to record filtered, and that one particular record that it's going through would then be filtered out accordingly. So just trying to keep the similarity to the Clarion, what we're all used to using for many years now. So that's that. What else have we done? We do have, if I just run this, if we imagine these are obviously dependent buttons because they are insert, change, delete. So the change and the delete buttons are definitely dependent on, are you on a record or not, or do you have any records or not? That kind of thing. They're dependent buttons, and you can add your own dependent button, which is Clarion's equivalent, or sorry, our equivalent of the Clarion browse no records. So you've got those. We've enhanced the processing of that. We did actually find that it was being called basically a few too many times, if truth be told. So we've now changed that. It's of course it's still called when needed, but if you, let's say one of the examples, and apologies for this, in the past you might have a default setting. I don't know if anyone actually uses this. Hopefully you do. You've got a default setting on the at the global level to say when to redisplay a row. So you can say after row change or manual refresh. What that means is if you call the add row method, if you pass it a parameter of force a refresh, then it will do it. If you don't pass it one, it will take the global setting by default. So if your default setting is add row change, after row change, then it will still go off and basically call it at that point. So there's a tip for you. For those who are doing lots of adding of rows manually, you might want to change that. If you don't need to, if you don't want to change it at the global level, of course you do have it at the local level. So let me just choose one, just a standard thing or simple. Any of these, doesn't really matter. There's a manually loaded report control, and in here you would have, I think it's under options, is it? Yeah. No, not that's a new setting. Refresh display. And by default, it's set to use global, which is the one I just showed you a second ago. But you can override it at the local level to say after row change or manual refresh. So if you're doing a batch of loading, you would want to have that set to manual. So delete all the rows, add all your records in quick succession, and then do your own manual populate at the end, and you would get your data loading faster. So that's a little tip. But to come back to the point I was starting with, we found that you could have it could calculate whether it needed to refresh or not, so on and so forth. That's great. But even if it wasn't refreshing, it would still call the processing of the managed dependent controls. Basically, should they be enabled and disabled or hidden and unhidden, so on and so forth. It was calling them regardless, and it shouldn't have been doing, because that's extra checks you're doing for every row when you really didn't need to. So we've optimized that, and we found it in a few places. So that's been enhanced. So this build is a good build from an enhancement point of view anyway. So I would recommend getting it, if nothing else, just for that setting. Next, where's my mouse gone? Sorry, I'm just making sure I'm still here. Yep. Next, we do have, again at the global level and at the local level, this initial data load. This is new. Previously, it would have been set to manually load because it never, you never had a method called data_load until very recently. Now you've got one, so now you've got these options, and you can say after the initialization, so when the control is initialized, it will call data load. After the window is opened, so maybe you want to get visually the window on the screen, and then load your data. So to the end user, it seems like it's loading faster. In reality, there's probably no difference, time difference, but from a visual point of view, it can look faster. So that's a good tip to have. On manual load, which would have been basically the equivalent of the original way of doing things. And a good tip there, the manual load, I would use myself when I'm using the docking panes. If anyone remembers a few weeks ago, we had the scenario where I wanted the panes to initialize as fast as possible, and then I wanted to, once the pane had been initialized, then I wanted to load the data. So once that the child window had been initialized, the report control had been initialized and so on, but not loaded, then I wanted the docking pane to host it, get it docked and positioned and visual to the end user as fast as possible. And only when that comes back and tells me it's been done, then I will manually load the data. So I get the better impression that the thing is opened and positioned and initialized faster, and then I present the data to the user. That's a little tip there as well. Okie dokie. What? We're nearly there now. Don't worry. Just for completeness, as with the other products, they all have a method called refresh contents. So the calendar has one called refresh contents, and I think the property grid has one called refresh contents, and I forget the others, I'll be honest with you. So this one's got one. So now you've got a method called refresh contents, and it will look at the data source of the report control, and it will refresh it accordingly. So if it's set to data bind, then it will go off and refresh the data bind data source, the ADO source. If it's file loaded, then it will go off and reread the records accordingly, and so on and so forth. That takes a parameter of true or false to force the refresh or not. And the last but not least is really down to the inline control, the inline filter and the inline search. So previously, there's a couple of things on this. If that was disabled, as it is now, all these prompts were basically disabled. And that was fine for the original version of them. But what we also added later on, just let me run the example. One of the things we added afterwards was a checkbox. Oh, it's not even on there. Oh, I'll tell you what, let's just demonstrate it on our new view, if you will. Let's come off that. That's as good as any. We'll go on to here. So we've got our window controls. And I want my inline filter. I want an option to say whether to display the inline filter, and I want an option to say whether to display the inline search. Obviously, as we always do, link them to the report control, which looks like they have done by default. So now I want them disabled by default, and these will pick up the settings from the report control and sync themselves automatically so that they are disabled by default and so on. But if they were disabled, I couldn't go and change these colors. So it might be that I want the row color of the filter to be maybe come up a light coal, and I want the search to come up maybe yellowy green. I'm not sure how this is going to look for the webinar, but you get the idea. So I want to select them, but I still want them to be off by default. So there they are, they're off. If I turn the filter on, it's that light coral. If I turn the search on, so it gives the user a visual indication. And of course, they could be set via a global variable, them colors. So you could have basically use just specify a variable, and those colors could be system-wide, used everywhere. So we've got them. Leading on to that, and last but not least, and we are nearly there now, is we found a bug on this, a couple of bugs actually. where numeric, probably a bad example, that's numeric, that was coming up with a 0, which meant if I went to here and started typing in find me the Ada, it would find the Adas, but because it had basically an empty picture in there, a 0 in there, it would filter those out as well because they don't match 0. So there was a bug, so that's been corrected. Same with the search, but the optimization of these finding the unique values, we actually found we could optimize that quite a lot. So we reworked some of the code on that. So the calculation of the unique column values, so like say they take them, has also been enhanced. It's still going to put an overhead on your system if you want to calculate all those unique values, but it has been optimized, so you will get a faster answer out of it. And then last but not least, and then we'll see how we fare. We spent 40 minutes talking on this now. Last but not least was, I'm just trying to find the example. It was this, the checkbox. That filter wasn't working correctly if the column was purely a checkbox. So now, unlike these where you can have an all, and it basically drop down the fields, this just takes the actual ticking of the check. So if it's unchecked, you will get everything, and if it is checked, you'll only get just the checked. I think any more. There was a couple of. There was inline. Just looking at the bug fixes. The select record button corrected. There was an issue with the select record button, and there was the Windows reset code was also being incorrect. I think that's to do with the legacy chain, if I remember rightly. But that's mainly it. So, quite a big-ish update, if truth be told. Any questions on that? No? That's good. Okie dokie. Now, the other update, but I've had a report of a particular potential issue on it, so that's why it was never announced, because it really went out as a not a private beta, but you basically didn't want to shout about it until somebody feeded something back to us. Was linked to the command bars, and it's linked really to do the initialization of the command bars, mainly if it's on the app frame. So if it's on the window, the command bar on a regular window, absolutely no problem. Just carry on working as normal. But if it's on the app frame, basically, as we all know, you can't put an OCX control on the application frame. So what we would do, what we do, both for the command bar, the task panel, shortcut bar, so on and so forth, calendars, we create a docked window, or for the calendar, actually, it's a hidden window, but we create a docked window on another thread, and we handle the interaction between that and the main application frame. The class is declared on the frame and so on and so forth, but the control is actually running on another thread. And we don't necessarily want to put it on the toolbar, because Clarion itself does have an issue with an OLE container on the toolbar if the VCR buttons are on the toolbar. Nothing to do with CodeJock, nothing to do with any kind of OCX actually. You can just put the OLE container on the toolbar, same toolbar as you would have the VCR buttons, and you'll get a GPF. So it's completely out of anybody's control but SV. So we do them on our own window, and basically we did some digging, and we are doing basically a lot of switching of targets, as you can imagine, back and forth. So we've done a lot of optimizations in that, and we've even introduced some critical locking to try and help out. So that is an enhancement which has gone out. I would actually say hang fire on that. It's version 406 of command bars, went out on Friday, but I would say hang fire on applying it just yet until I report back, because it's really just going out to being tested in a couple of scenarios. Once we get the green light on that, those same enhancements and the optimization should be quite good from a speed point of view. Those optimizations will also go into the other products that go into the application frame. So the shortcut bar, the docking panes. Docking panes go on there? No, the shortcut bar, the task panel, and possibly the calendar for the reminders function. So I would hang fire on that. Okie dokie. Just got a quick question in from Andrew. My app looks terrible. Seeing these, I really need to up my game. Oh, okay. Oh, well, let's open the mic. Andrew, we always like to put people on the spot and open the mic. So if you've got a mic, you're open. If you haven't, then sorry for putting you on the spot. Not sure. Your microphone's open. Okay, well, this is obviously it's just report control. There's a few. I would say check out the YouTube channel for the Noyantis group, and obviously check out us here on our weekly webinar, and we cover lots of different things. The product suite includes report controls, but it also includes I can show you the command bar, which I just mentioned a minute ago. While I'm just loading that, were there any questions on the we've got the command bars? Oh no, that was one of the tests. Are there any questions on what we just mentioned about the change, if you will, from the initialization? Let's just run this. Okay. Yeah, so I haven't done any strict timings on the initialization, but it's all purely theoretical, but it should, by definition, be faster. Basically, there's a method which is called initialize init contents or initialize content, something like that, which in turn goes off initializes the bars, the controls within the bars. So you can see, like here, you can imagine there's a lot of controls you would have on the bars, and so on. So initializes the bars, the groups, the tabs if you need the tabs, the controls themselves, and I think there's a couple of other things. There's about 5 or 6 different pieces of content. And what we've done to stop a lot of target switching is we've actually done the target switch ourselves right at the start of that call, and then switch it back right at the end. And the difference, basically what the difference would have been is you would have had the main thread 1, being active, your application frame. Then you've got this, let me just close that. You've got your command bar technically on another thread, on thread 2. And as it's going through and creating and interacting and doing things with it, it's switching the threads between 1 and 2 constantly. So what we've done is say, okay, but it only does it if it needs to. That's the main point. And of course, during the initialization, chances are it would need it. So we've done the manual switch ourselves because we're in charge of the initial initialization. So we've done the switch ourselves. We do the initialization. We do which will stop a lot of switching, and then at the end, when we've finished ourselves, then we switch it back. Okay. Any other questions? I've actually gone quite a bit longer than I actually wanted to, even though we normally stay on for a bit more. I do understand, and I do have to, as I say, apologise to Alejandro because I did promise we will look at the virtual mode, but we're just not going to have the time today. But in fairness, you did get some of the updates you wanted in the report controls, so hopefully you liked those. I know he was waiting for the bug fix on the check filter. So.
Looking pretty good, Andy.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with the report control. I had high hopes for this, but I need to speak with the user because I'm not sure their implementation is throwing it or something's changed. So that's why I'm just telling people to hang fire on that. I might be overzealous. I might not be as well, by the way. So just hang fire on the 406. But the report control, I am pretty happy with, I've got to admit.
Yeah, we've been having trouble with command bars where it's, I don't know, it'll load fine it's like a ribbon bar on the app frame.
Yeah.
And everything will load fine like 10 times, and the 11th time there'll be some items missing.
Well, I was chatting with
items missing on drop downs and stuff. So.
Yeah, well, I was chatting with Mike, and he was saying they were interesting. the particular application in question, they're experiencing a GPF, but they're nothing to do with the initialization. The initializers, they get out all the content that they would want, and then they have options within their own system where they need to put it into a particular mode and basically stop everything in the command bar. So they go off and start changing properties of every button they have, and they have quite a few. And they start changing the properties of every button, and it was basically they're getting they're getting a GPF randomly, but yeah, again, not all the time, just randomly. So we don't know. I need to look at the code that they're issuing. I mean, nothing should cause a GPF, and they shouldn't be getting that. But by the same token, it is manual code, so we need to look at that to see what it is. But speaking with Mike Hansen, and he was saying we are doing. Is there any tips we can do? So I told him a few tips, and also basically what if we're using a set target, is that going to he was a bit worried about the usage of it in quick succession, and you imagine they are off on another thread and they're telling it to go and change, so there potentially would be a lot of switching. It's always been in there and so on. You could try that in yours, John, but do have a backup of your Clarion setup. I would just say, have and see if it helps you on yours, because the theory is it should do.
Yeah, I could well do that.
So, but do have a backup, just be on the safe side.
Okay.
Big disclaimer there.
So I'm waiting for you to have a project that has a large multi-DLL system in it, so that we can move the DLLs up your list.
The trouble is, do you know, I have a project. I have several, because I only really work with multi-DLL. So, but it's just one of those. But I did mention last week we started a new developer started with us last week. She's been eased into it, so I'm not exposing her to you guys just yet, because you'll scare her off, and I don't want you to do that. But yes, she will be joining us on future webinars. Wanted to learn the ropes, learn a bit more about Clarion, learn our products, use our products. So, and one of the other tasks, which I've already mentioned to her, will be to get the doc to explain out and get our documentation going. Never mind up to date, going. So you can expect a bit of there's another pair of hands on it. So now we can expect leaps and bounds progression on it. So that'll be a good thing. So it should ease my workload, which will give me more time to spend on the things like the multi-DLL and so on and so forth. So plans are afoot, actions are afoot, I should say.
Are afoot. Yep. I mean, I can do the report control. I just have to go back and compare it with my changes and then put the changes into the template and then carry on. It doesn't take that long. It's just
you just don't want
nice if it didn't have to take any time at all.
And there will be another one, possibly two updates before DevCon, which actually isn't that long away now.
No, it's not at all.
No, so we've taken on a lot of project work, which has been great, and so on. But it has an impact on other things. So a little more planning, another pair of hands. Obviously, Wendy's training up as well. So, but now she's more or less finished the Chillcat classes and so on. So so there's other pair of hands there as well. So it's all taking shape. We're getting there. Okay, right. There's no other questions, so I am going to take the advantage to cut it short, if nobody minds. So until next week, I shall see you all then. That's good. Yep, no questions. Great. Okay.
Yeah,
thanks, everybody.
Go.
Bye.
Bye.